First and most important thing to say is welcome or welcome back for the folks that were here for part 1 yesterday. We have got a lot to do. When we left off yesterday, we were just starting to look at some of the different types of forms and different types of questions and how you can use them. We're going to finish up that with a few more examples, and then we're going to look at what we call skip logic and quizzes, how to create quizzes. Following that, then we're going to go in to start looking at the actual responses and different ways you can. Am I going to review? To be honest, I don't know what flubberoo is, so I think the answer is going to be no on that one because that's new to me. All right. So that's going to work out actually with the chat box over there. Okay, so the form that we were working on yesterday, if you want to grab your tablet or smart device, it's right here. But I'm also going to pull up, it's going to hide it for just a moment. I'm also going to pull up the link to this form if you need to access it this way. So let me just grab it out of this PDF and I will drop it in the chat box. So if you wanted to go to it yourself, you don't need to fill it out, obviously, but if you wanted to go to it and save it or keep it, you're welcome to do that. You know, save the URL so you can go back and look at it later. So that's what we're looking at first. All righty. So let's bump out of this. Now, one question that came up yesterday, and I want to address this first, is I didn't go into chat. It went to everyone in the waiting room. Let's try that again. Okay, that should do it. And thank you, Linda, for letting me know that. So we have that file upload option. If you want students to submit documents or pictures or video or whatever, if you wanted to send you a file of their assignment, where does it go? So what we're looking at right here, this is my Google Drive, and this is the folder that has the form in it. Well, when somebody uploads through the form, Google Forms will automatically create a subfolder with the name of that form, and all of their documents are going to go in there. So for example, we've got this form name. The form is called To Student Assignments, and here is File Responses. So these are the uploaded files. So if I click on that, I now have, in this case, even 2 folders underneath that, because there were 2 questions that had file uploads. So let's say using any common objects, create a representation of syzygy. So I go in there, and there are the files that students uploaded. So when students, so the point is this, when students upload their assignments through a form, Google Forms is going to create a subfolder, and those files are going to go into that. So let me back up one. So we had a question about a car traveling 60 miles an hour. That was one of the uploads. The question was basically, you know, how long does it take to go 30 miles? And show me a picture of your work. Show me the work that you used to get to it. And fortunately, somebody yesterday went ahead and did that and uploaded a picture. So I can open it, and there's her picture. So showing her work, because that's always one question. You know, we always say, hey, I want to see how you got to your answer. So how do you do that if they're just filling out a form? Well, that form, the document or file upload button allows them to do that, to create a graphical representation or to take a picture of their form or do it on some other file and then upload it into your Google Drive. So that was that. Okay. So, not seeing anybody else trying to enter at this moment. Good. So let's take a look. Let's go down to where we left off. And just to finish a few examples here. So let's see. We got pretty far into this. So let me just jump through a couple of pages of the form. And writing prompts, we did all of that. Explain your answers. We did, see, here's the one with the questions about showing your work. Draw the problem, take a picture, and upload your solution. So that's where those files came from. So we got through that. Next. All right, so now this is where we left off yesterday, and this was actually a really good stopping point because now we can talk about something called skip logic. And as I mentioned yesterday, it is possible to direct students to a particular question based on how they answer the current question. So where this becomes very useful is if you want to give students a chance to retry their answer. So here, for example, and I'll just show you how it works. So here, for example, we've got a question. Which one of these is underground? Lava, magma, or neither one? Well, only one of those is the correct answer. The underground one is going to be magma. So if the student answers that correctly, I want the student to simply go to the next question, right? They've done it. But let's say the student answers it incorrectly. Well, then this gives me a chance to do some very quick reteaching. So let me show you. So if they do it correct and we say next, it goes to the next question. But let me back up. If the student chooses the wrong answer, I want to provide a little hint to the student to reinforce the content and give them another chance. So I'm going to say lava, which is wrong. I'm going to say next. And look what I've got. Hint. Magma is formed deep inside of the earth. A little hint. So which one is it? And I'm going to give them a chance to try it again. And hopefully they get it right. And then when we say next, because it's the right answer, the student should go to the next question, which is, why did the chicken cross the playground? And the answer, of course, is to get to the other slide. So how do we set that up? So you can see it can be very useful. And one thing that we don't want is when students finish the assignment, or they finish the lesson, or they leave the classroom, we don't want them walking away with incorrect information. So in a case like this, we can actually reinforce the learning content, give them a chance to provide the correct response. So they've learned that not only have they gotten the right answer, but they've learned something along the way. So how do we do it? So let me show you. Well, that's kind of fun. So let's jump down to skip logic, and I will show you how that works. All right. So here is the original question. Which one of these flows is underground? And let me just click on it to activate it. And why is it not doing it? To read the questions to the students, not that I'm aware of. If they've got some kind of a screen reader, maybe, but there's nothing built into Google Forms that I'm aware of that would do that. All right, here we go. So let me activate this question. Now you'll notice at the bottom of every question, it will automatically take students to the next question. So for example, on this one, after this section, it says after section 6, continue to the next section. So it's the default is just to go from one section to the next section. But we can interrupt that. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to use our little menu items, our 3 little dots over here. Oh, thank you, Tara. And there's an option in here that says go to section based on answer. Now, this is not going to work for short and long responses, but anytime where you have predetermined possible answers like check boxes or multiple choice, you have the option to say, go to a particular section based on an answer. Now, here are the three options: lava, magma, and neither. And when I click on it, I can choose where do I want the student to go to next. Now, it's not going to jump to a specific question. What it will do is it will jump to a specific section. So when I set this up, as you'll see, I have the question. My next section, my next page is just the hint and a retry. That's all there is in that section. The following section has the next question in it because it's going to go to a section, not a specific question. So what I said is, well, if they answer lava, go to section 8, which is called reteach and retry. And so down here, there's my section 8, and it only has one question in it, and it's the hint, and we give them another chance at it. So if they choose the wrong one up here, they choose lava, we're going to go to section 8. If they say neither, which is also incorrect, they're going to go to section 8, which is a chance to try it again. But if they get the right answer, magma, then we're going to skip over section 8 and we're going to go straight to section 9, which is the next question. So if they get the wrong one, they're going to come down here to this section, which only has the hint and a retry. If they got it right, they're going to skip over 8 and they're going to go right to 9, which is the next question. So that's how skip logic works. Now, obviously, if you're going to use some kind of skip logic like this, you need to already have the sections set up before you're able to do it, because if there was no section 8, I can't indicate they should go to section 8 because it doesn't exist. If there's no section 9, I can't say, hey, right answer, go all the way over to section 9, okay, because it doesn't exist. So you need to set up the sections first, and then when you set up your skip logic, you can indicate where students should go next. And it's very simple. Again, so once I have said go to section based on answer, then for each response, I can choose the section from the list over here. So that's just a really good way to sort of not only help students to submit correct responses, but it gives you a chance to reteach or to have them think more deeply about the content. Okay, so that's really all that skip logic is. And I think that's probably for our purposes for students, that's probably one of the most useful ways to do that. But, you can also think of other things. If you say, hey, enter your grade level. If you are grade 4, skip over to these sections over here. If you're grade 5, skip to this section over here. So you can also do that. Now, additionally, at the end of every section, so it's going to default to continue to the next section. But you have this little down arrow right here. After this section, where do we go? You can click that, and again, you can have them skip to any section that you want them to. Normally, they would just go from one to the next, but you can see, you know what, if we finished all of these, skip the next few questions, not relevant, or for whatever reason, we don't need them. So let's go to a different section instead. Now, only one caveat, because I've seen it done. If you have if after the section, you have them go back to the same section, then they're just going to get caught in a loop. So if we finish section 6 and we go back to, say, section 5, well, then they do 5, then they get to 6, then they go back to 5 and they get to 6, and so forth. So you kind of have to plan it out in advance where students are going to go. But for practical purposes, generally they're going to go from one to the next. And any kind of skipping logic, you're going to make a part of an actual question like we have here. Okay, so that's skip logic. Oof. Now, let's take a look at quizzes because this is going to get us into the data also. So let me close this one and leave the page. Let me close this one and we're going to go to quizzes. Now, here is the, if you want to go to this form, here is the QR code. I'll give folks just a moment to access it. And again, you have to be logged into your Google account. And while you're doing that, let me put up the link as well. Student quiz example. Because when we start using forms for quizzes, we've got a lot of pretty interesting and useful options available to us. So form 3, and there's the link to it there also. Okay, in the chat box. So let's take a look at quizzes. And if you want to take it, it's actually kind of an interesting one. So let's pull up, oops, not that, excuse me, cancel. Let's pull up the preview. There we go. My screen is blown up too much. So I've got a sample quiz here. Now this one, like I said, always, if it's an assignment or anything you're going to grade, obviously you need the student's name. And then we can ask some questions. So this sample is about insects. So which of these is not a part of the body? Waist, abdomen. How many eyes do they have? Insects. Let's call it 6. How many pairs of legs do they have? 3 pairs, because that's 6 legs. Insects hatch from eggs, true or false? Which crickets make chirping sounds? Males. What's the largest spider in the world? Does anybody remember from yesterday? We looked at a picture of it, just out of curiosity. Either by voice or in the chat. Anybody remember?
Tarantula.
Oh, much bigger. Although, funny story, in my entire life, I've probably only seen 2 tarantulas on a highway or on a road ever. But in the last 3 weeks, I've been going up to Las Vegas and out to Ruidoso. I have probably seen 10 or 12 tarantulas on the road. I'm going to catch one day, just to horrify my wife. But that's not it. So let's go ahead and put that in there anyway. And then hit next. That's the biggest one right there, the Goliath bird eater, because they do actually eat birds. Okay. And I wanted to put that up there for the folks who said you were little, if you're a little drowsy, just to see if that would wake people up. They're migrating maybe. Abigail got it. Yeah, Goliath bird eater. Interesting about the tarantulas, they're migrating. How curious. It does make me realize I do not want to go tramping around in the desert right now, because if I've seen that many on the road, there's a lot more running around. That could be it. That could be it. All right, so we've got this little quiz set up. We've got a submit button over here. All right, I'll just do that. Let's see what we can do to turn this into a quiz. So if we're thinking about a quiz, one thing that we're going to want to do is assign point values, right? because then students will enter the responses, and I don't want to have to print off a bunch of pages, go through them manually and say, I got 2 points for this and 2 points for that and 2 points for that. Google Forms will already do that for us. So let's see how we do that. Now, so we've got our form here. Now up here at the top, we've got our little gearbox where we go to get our settings for the form. So let's click on that. So general settings, do you want to get their email addresses? Do you want to limit them to only one response? So this is every form right here. Are they allowed to edit after submitting? Are they going to see the summary charts of all the responses that have been already submitted? And you can either turn those on or off. But what we are looking for right now is quizzes and presentation, show link, shuffle the question order. I don't actually recommend shuffling the question order for a quiz, especially if your very first item is what's your name. That might get mixed down further, but I think you want to keep that as your first one. So, quizzes. Well, the very top item says, make this a quiz. So I'm going to click on it to turn it on. This will allow me to assign point values to questions and allow for auto grading. Now, obviously, it's not going to do any grading or checking on short and long answers, but anything we've got a multiple choice or you've got a matrix, you've got a rubric, any of those kinds of things, this will work fine. Do you want them to see their grade right away or later after you have a chance to review it? What do you want them to see? The ones they missed? Should they be able to see the correct answers at the end? Should they see what their point values are? Personally, I would leave all of those checked. Yeah, let them see what they missed, because then they say, oh, this is the part I need to study on for the test. Let them see what the correct answers are, because it's going to reinforce the correct information. And I like letting kids see how well they did. I mean, think about it from the perspective of the person taking the quiz. They answer a bunch of questions and they're going to walk away saying, well, how did I do? Right? So I like to let kids and adults know how they did. How many points did they get and how well did they do? So right now, we have made this into a quiz. And just by turning on this one up here. So let's save this option. And now we can assign some point values. So let's take a look at the very first question. Which one of these is not a part of an insect body? Down here on the bottom left, we have something called answer key, because obviously you have to indicate which one's the right answer. So I'm going to click on answer key. Now, how many points total? Let's call this 5 points. And I can either just type it in like that, or I can use my little up-down arrows, which may be difficult for you to see on your screens at this point. But I'm going to call this 5 points. All right. Now, I choose which one is the correct answer, and I just simply have to click on it. Waste. That's the correct answer. So if the student chooses that, the student is going to get 5 points. And maybe I want to provide some feedback also. If they get the wrong answer, do I want to tell them, sorry, that's not correct? Maybe. Correct answers, hoorah, you got it right. Okay, that's optional. The two things that you have to do, you have to assign point values, the total points, and you have to indicate which one is the correct response. So let's go to the next one. How many eyes do insects have? Oops. I click on answer key. I'm going to call this one also 5 points, and I will select the correct answer. How many pairs of legs? Answer key, 5 points. And pairs of legs, 3 pairs. Insects hatch from eggs. It's a drop-down answer key, 5 points. True. Which crickets? I'm going to click on this one. We're just going to go through these very quickly. 5 points. The males. And you see, for this one, I can put points on here. If it's a single answer, I can put that single answer in there. But if you're asking students to explain something, you might want to leave it alone and then do it manually later. I'll go ahead and still say 5 points. And I can put in the correct answer there. But the problem is you're going to run into spelling issues. If it's a sentence or a couple of sentences, you cannot predict what are all the possibilities, basically. So my recommendation actually would be, go ahead and give it some points, but then turn on your manual scoring so you have a chance to go and review it. Okay, so that's how we assign points and how we indicate the correct answer. I will say done. And I don't think there was any question for that. All right. So now that we've set this up as a quiz, we've added points to the individual items, and we've indicated the correct responses. Now, if we go and try the quiz, require email. So I am director@nmrec1.org. David. All right. Which of these is not a part? I'm going to say thorax. And how many eyes? They have 2 eyes. I'm doing some wrong answers. How many pairs? 3. From eggs, false. I'll say they both make chirping, which is incorrect. And this is the Goliath bird eater. Next. And finally, submit your response. I can go now and see my score, because those are the options that I chose. So I got that one incorrect. Sorry, that's not correct. What I might have done for the feedback to an incorrect response is say, hey, sorry, that's not right. The actual answer is abdomen, or waist in this case. So if you do decide to use feedback, that does give you one last chance to try to remind or reinforce the content of the lesson. So I think it's a good thing to do. How many eyes? Oh, I got that one wrong. And the correct answer was 6. How many pairs? Hey, I got it right. That was incorrect. This one should have been males. Now you'll notice the largest spider in the world is marked as wrong. That's because when I assigned points, I did not put in the specific answer. So you have to kind of think about whether or not you would assign points to open-ended ones. I might have simply left that one blank. Obviously, this is going to work best if you're using drop-down menus, multiple choice, checkboxes, or anything where you have control over the responses, because maybe the student puts in Goliath bird eater, but they forget the space between the 2 words, and it's going to show up as incorrect. So you really have to think about that carefully. So that is how you turn these into quizzes. And I see if anyone in chat, if anyone wants to know how to add Flubberoo for grading, there's an email address, which I assume means feel free to give him an email and he will let you know. All right. How many points did I get? Right at the top, I didn't do very well. I only got 5 out of 30. So where does all this go, right? So we've done this form. We've got some points. Where are the responses now? All right. Tara should be entering now. So where does it go? So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to get rid of this, and back to our form. So obviously, if I switch from questions to responses, I can see the summary of all of the points. How did your kids do in general, right? How many points did they get in general? And it gives you a very nice snapshot of the total points achieved. So you can say, the kids did really great on this. We've got a couple at the low end, but most of all, they did pretty well. So maybe I'm going to just continue on with my next lesson, but maybe I'll address a few kids separately and reinforce some things. What questions were frequently missed? The scores, and there's my 5 points. Names, and now I can look at the responses, overall responses for each question below that. What percentage of students chose each of the responses? And sometimes you'll find this. You'll say, you know what? The kids overall did pretty well. When I look at their scores in general, all of my students did a good job on this. But we come down here to frequently missed questions, which was, I went too far. And I find out that most of my students missed that question. That would tell me as the instructor, you know, we got all this content, but here's the one thing that I really need to go back and spend a little more time on. I don't need to reteach the whole lesson, but I do need to reteach this particular part right here. Because the trap is sometimes we just look at those aggregate scores, we say, wow, students did great. And they might have done great on 90% of it, but as a group, they might have done very poorly on a couple specific parts. And that helps us to identify those particular parts. Can you print the responses? Right there. So for printing, I click on this, my little menu over here, and print responses or download them, either way, into the spreadsheet. That's the place to do that. So now, what if, while we're looking at the response section, what if you want to turn the form off? We tell students, hey, you have to complete this form, submit this work by 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. And after 5 o'clock, I'm turning it off. How do you do that? How do you turn them on or off? Or how do you say, I've created 3 or 4 forms that we're going to use over the next few weeks. I don't want, and I'm going to send the links out to the students. Here's what's coming up, we tell them. But we don't want them to respond until the correct time, until it's time for them to do so. This little button right here, accepting responses. If we click it, we can turn off the form. They can still get to it, but they're not going to be able to respond to it. They'll get this message. The form quiz about insects is no longer accepting responses. That's what they're going to get. So when you're ready for them to start using it, you simply click back on this. It turns it a nice color and it says accepting responses or not. So the place we got to it, over here, we're developing the form, editing the questions and so on. We go to responses, and then we can either turn on or turn off the ability to take the form, to respond to the questions. Just as easy as that. All right, so quizzes. The responses are on the original form you created. Yes, they are, and they're associated specifically with this form right here. So when I look at these responses, it's only about that form. But here is, in some ways, the better way to access this. Because we've collected responses, Google Forms can automatically create a Google Sheet with all of those responses in it. Do we want to do this now? Let's see. We're going to come back to this, but let me go ahead and just show you very quickly. So over here, we've got, so this is my Google Drive. So here we've got quizzes. There's the form. There's no spreadsheet. I've got my little purple icon for the forms. Now, check this out. There we go. Okay. Right here, I've got a little green button called Create Spreadsheet.
What do you mean you're welcoming?
Okay. So when I do this, Google Forms is going to create a spreadsheet and dump all of these responses into it. So I'm going to click on that, create spreadsheet, create a new spreadsheet, which will be named according to this form. So it'll be 3 quizzes, responses. Or I can, if I already have a spreadsheet with scores, you can have them go into there. And
okay, it's up.
I hate to do this, but somebody needs to mute. So thank you. So I can have my responses go to an existing spreadsheet, or I can create a new one specific to this form. So in this case, I'll just say, create a new spreadsheet, create, and now it's going to create a form. Let me pop it up here. And what we will see in just a moment is a spreadsheet with the questions and all of the responses. And there we go. So I've got scores, and then we've got each question. The first question was name. Which of these is not? How many eyes? How many legs? True, false. So here I'm looking at each student's responses in spreadsheet format. It also tells me when did the student submit. Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not. So right away, I know, David, me, I blew it. I got 5 out of 30 points. And what were my responses here? So that's pretty handy. So it's a Google Sheet, obviously, and I'm not going to spend much time at all talking about what we do with the data. We've got a whole different session for that, okay? But this gives me a chance to just jump right in and quickly see all the students, what are their overall scores, and how did they respond to the questions. And we're gonna do more with this in a moment with the next form. But that is how we set up quizzes and how we see some aggregate and individual data and where all those data go. But so you notice I said create new form. Now over here in my drive, this didn't exist before. 3 quizzes, responses. That document wasn't there, but since I said create a spreadsheet, now I've got the spreadsheet and I can just simply open it up and there's all the responses. And I can even share it with others, which is kind of fun. All right, so that's quizzes. Now let's do something a little more nifty. One of the types of assessments which is very common is called the closed test. You've got some text with some blanks in it. Students have to fill in responses. So let's take a look at a closed type test. All right, and let me give you the link for that. If you want to do the URL, there's that. And if you want to do the QR code, there's that. I'm also going to show you how I make these QR codes and how I kind of pretty them a little bit. There's a really great site on the internet for doing exactly that, which I will show you. So there's that. And since we're talking about closed tests, here is the link. In the chat box. So a couple ways to get to it. All right, let's Minimize that. And let's take a look. So this is pretty simple. It's very, closed tests are very basic forms of tests. So what's your name? Let me blow it up a little bit. There we go. The brown recluse is one of the most dangerous. Somebody tell me, what's the answer?
Spider.
Spiders. Oops. Oh. Let's do the preview up here so I can actually see it. So my name is Bob because it's fast. Spiders. Its blank destroys the walls of blood vessels, fangs, venom, pincers, or poison. Anybody? Venom. Thank you. The brown recluse's venom can cause large ulcers, welts, medical bills, or blisters.
I think it's ulcers.
Ulcers. Okay, we'll try that one and say next. All right, so that's one way that we do the close thing, or you can have a longer passage, obviously. If you're going to do a longer passage with multiple breaks in the text to fill in, I would strongly recommend you do them one sentence at a time, because you're not going to be able to say, hey, this passage has 2 blanks. I mean, you could have in your options first and second possibility, and mix them up like that. I think it gets kind of complicated. So my recommendation really is just to make separate questions out of them. It's going to make it a lot easier to develop the form. All right. Enter a made up word. Kerflunk. I'll just pop some things in here. An illness, measles. Measles. Flu. Okay. Plural noun, books. Okay. An adjective. This is the Mad Libs. Stinky, another adjective. Lovely, a silly word, whatever that is. Bathroom, enter a number. Okay, I'm just popping in some stuff so you can see how this is going to work. Enter another adjective, yellow. All right, and submit. So this is a Mad Lib, and these are actually kind of fun to do. Submit another, no. All right, so they submit. It's all going to go into the responses over here. How people did, and there's my responses down there. So let's see how we did on the spider quiz. 33% said snakes, the rest said spiders. It's okay, responses. I didn't set this up as a quiz, so we don't have some of those other options, but these are the responses we got. Now, what about the Mad Lib one down here? Let's go take a look at the spreadsheet. Close type test responses. And let me open that. How does it work when we do this? Well, here's our question at the top, just like before, and here's what each person responded. Okay. Oh, thank you. We just got another one pop in. And did you all notice that? When that last answer was submitted, this spreadsheet was automatically updated, which is kind of neat because then I can see the responses as they are coming in. If somebody else does it, it's automatically going to be updated here as well. So here's what each person answered for this. Now, for the Mad Libs section, I had to do something tricky because obviously all I'm asking for is particular types of words. But they're going to be dumped into a longer text. Dear school nurse, Kerflunk will not come to school today. She has a case of flu and has terrible books and a stinky fever. We made an appointment with the lovely Dr. Buga, who did his studies in the bathroom and has 12 degrees in medicine. He can send you the yellow details if needed. Now, how did I add all that extra text in there? Because the spreadsheet that is automatically created is only going to have the questions and the responses. but I wanted to add in a lot of other text. So like if you've got any kind of a closed passage, all you're going to get is what are the individual words that were submitted in response to the blanks in the text. So it's not really going to make much sense. So I needed to add in all the extra words, and it turns out it's very easy to do in Google Sheets. So here I am, my cursor is hovering right above column G, and I am going to right click with my mouse, right click, and I can insert a column to the right, to the left. I can also delete columns and hide columns. But in this case, what I did is I inserted columns and I added the rest of the text in there. Hello, I'm Bob's mom. And now for the close test, it starts, when I add in all the extra text, it starts to make sense. Well, obviously it's still kind of hard to read because I've got to read up here in row 1 and then down here in the next row and up here and then down there and up and down. So we can actually just highlight and fill the information down. The way I did that, very, very simply, and this works for Excel also, by the way. I clicked on the top one and I dragged my cursor down till all of the rows are highlighted. And then on my keyboard, I did Control D, and it fills down, D for down, all the responses. On a Mac, it's going to be Option, a little Mac thing. There's other ways to do that using the commands up here. You know, data. There's a fill down up here somewhere. That's a different session. But honestly, the stupid simple way to do that: highlight and then Control or Command D, and it fills it in. Now I can read the responses straight across with all the extra information in place. So there's a little pro tip for folks about how to copy information down. Just click and highlight by dragging, and then Control or Command D, and it fills down whatever the top one is. Ulcers. Okay. So with a closed test, I think that actually makes a lot of sense to do that. It takes a little bit of time. You know, you've got the responses and the questions already in there, and it takes some time to add the columns and then type in the remaining text. But when you go back to review it or to share it with students, it's much, much easier to read. So that is closed tests. We have 32 minutes. Okay. We're actually doing okay, believe it or not. I'm just looking at my notes over here. Group work. So let's take a look. Let me close some of these out. Let's take a look at the fourth form, forms for shared work. What about using forms for group work, right? Because after all, we're trying to get students not only more engaged in the instruction, but we'd also like to have them engage with one another. So let's take a look at this one. I will pull up the QR code for starters. So if you want to use your tablet or phone, you can just point your camera at that. And I will also put the link, let me slide that over. I will also put the link in the chat box. Form 4. There. Okay, let's get out of there. So, obviously the first thing we want to know is who's submitting. Now it could be, hey, put in all of your names, or if the groups have a group number or a group identifier, we can just ask them for that. Okay. Then think about this. one of the things that we generally want to know when students are doing group work is, where are you in the process? Now, certainly in a live classroom, kids huddled together around tables, we can kind of just sort of walk around and say, hey, where are you? What step are you on? Or we can look at their stuff. But in a virtual sense, that's obviously much more difficult to do. And, sometimes you, for whatever reason, don't want to walk around and look over all their shoulders. You just want to know very quickly, where are you? So you can simply ask them in a form, what step is your group on? So in this sample, we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 steps to the process, which is actually a physics problem, or a process for physics problems. It also works for algebra as well. So all we want to know is, quickly tell me, where are you? They can go to the form. They can click on the step that they're currently on. You can also ask them, what problems are you running into, or what are you trying to do? So we can just simply ask them. And very importantly, you need to know whether or not you need to intervene. Does a particular group need some help? And who needs help, right? Because if you've got 6 groups of kids, maybe 4 of those groups are doing just fine. They're making good progress. They're getting it figured out. You really don't need to spend any time with that group. They're doing fine without you. What you need to know is, where do I, the teacher, need to go and provide some assistance? So we ask them, are you stuck? Are you doing okay? I'm stuck. We need help. We're okay. We are so lost. We don't even know what we're supposed to be doing. That group we're going to go visit, or we're done. Another way to do a very quick progress check-in, again, we're going to ask them, who are you? What's your group? And we can simply ask them, what are you trying to figure out? What are you trying to accomplish? How are you going about solving this problem? Because one of the things that obviously we want kids to do is we want them to think very critically. We want them to learn to think critically. So sometimes we have to coach them through the questions, right? If you are thinking critically about what you're doing, what kinds of questions would you need to answer for yourself? And we train them to do that, if train's the right word, but we teach them to do that by providing those questions to them and having them respond. So another way to do that, this is more of a short, long answer type, where we're actually looking for their thinking about what they're doing. But ultimately, we want to know 2 things. Do you think you're progressing satisfactorily? And I used one of those Likert type scales here. We're totally stuck, we're done, or we're almost done. And most importantly, do you need to discuss it with me, the teacher? And if a group says yes, then that's where you go and you spend their time, your time. So that's just a couple of ways to monitor group work, especially if you've got kids working remotely, or sometimes if you have a large class of kids when we go fully back to live, you need to know 2 things. One is, how are they doing? Well, 3 things. What are they doing? How are they doing? And do they need my assistance at this moment? So this is a very good way. So in a case like this, you might actually have a QR code posted on the board, projected, or so on like that. And you could say, 10 minutes have gone by. Everybody stop. One person in the group, pull up that form and respond to it. You're at your desk, wherever you are, you see the responses right away. Say, group 3 said yes, they need to discuss the project with me. And that's where you go. And then maybe in 20 minutes or however you do it again.
Okay, I got it. Join me.
Okay. So using forms for monitoring and providing assistance to group work. And that's kind of all I've got about that. So let's bump out of that. These are just some different examples. Now, how about for students monitoring their own work? So that's you monitoring their work, right? But how about them monitoring their own work or each other's work. Let's take a look at 5. And there's the QR code to it if you want to go there. And I will put the link in the chat box. So 2 ways to get to it. All right. So let me pull up forms that students can use to monitor their own work. And that will be, no, we want this one. And here I've used a variety of different types of questions. Yesterday I mentioned creating rubrics. This is going to show us some examples of rubrics. Let me just pull up the preview over here. So what's one way you can do a rubric? Again, rubrics are super powerful, not just for you to score and assess students' work, but also it helps them to understand what is expected of me and what should I do if I'm doing it right? What should my product look like if I have successfully completed this assignment? So we're not going to spend time talking about rubrics today, but they're absolutely valuable for both assessment and for helping students to understand their own progress. So there's some ways to do that. On this one, this first one here, I used multiple choice grid, right? But I only have one, instead of multiple rows, you can have as many rows as you want. I only used one row because we're only looking at one particular topic. So if my topic is paragraph, here, 0, 1, 2, 3, and that should have said 4 over there. Here are the different levels in my rubric. Maybe they're looking at a classmate's work, peer review. Well, tell us about their paragraphs. Fewer than 3 sentences? No. Contains 3? Yeah. Contains a sentence that introduces, typo, hello, topic, 3 sentences supporting information. Yeah, that's where they've done. Then they're going to submit this, which is their review of their classmates' work. So that's one way to do a rubric. Another way to do a rubric looks like this. With this first one, it's a multiple choice grid, so we can only choose one. But another way to do it is using a checkbox grid where we can select multiple options. Say, did they contain 3 or more sentences? Yes. Do we have a sentence that introduces the topic? Yes. Do we have 3 or more sentences about the topic with supporting details? No. Provides transition words and phrases to connect? Yes. So by using checkboxes, we can look at specific details that are components, in this case, of a well-written paragraph. And some of them they're going to do, and some of them they don't do. So instead of giving an overall score, instead we're looking for each specific indicator, and we're trying to determine whether or not the sample work has met those indicators. And then what recommendations do you have? Work on supporting details, right? Because that's the one they didn't get. So that's a very nice and easy way to help students use rubrics to grade their own work or to grade their own work. Now, what if those indicators for the rubric are long and complicated? Now, we see this a lot with student assessments. Are they exceeding the standards, meeting them, does not meet, or missing? And we have a variety of things that we're looking for. And they might all have different indicators. So how in the world are we going to squeeze all of those different indicators into a single matrix? It's impossible. So what we do instead is in the title, we created a title. Here's what you're going to do. Evaluate your classmate. In the title, we simply insert a link to the rubric right over here. And the students can print it off if they want to, or they can simply switch back and forth and say, here's my rubric for each of those same items and the qualifiers or the criteria for each of the levels of proficiency. Nice thing about doing it this way is they can print it, take it home, hang it up, put it in their notebooks, and continuously refer to it. So how did I put the link in there? Let me show you. Forms, blank form, create and share. So I did a title. So I clicked on add title and description, same stuff as yesterday. And what I want to do is I want to insert a link in this. So show the description. And it's actually pretty simple. I just had to get the link, the share link of the document over here. So I can say share, get link. So I've got the document in my folder. When I right click on it, I say get link. And, okay, I got it. I can copy it right here. So I click copy and it tells me link is copied. So now over here on the description, I just have to paste like that. So I copy the link from my drive by right clicking on it. I say get link. I copy the link and then I can just paste it right into the description. So on the form, there's the link to the rubric in this case. So it's possible to add links, and that's how you would do that. Why would you do that? Well, it's very handy in cases like this where you've got a lot of material to refer to, or you want them to go and read something else or to watch something else. You can put a link to it right here. Now, yesterday we talked about how do you put a video into a question or into a form. And as we discovered, you can only embed YouTube videos. And somebody said, how about other video types? What if you have your own video? This is the way you're going to do it. You'll have the video stored in your drive. You will get the link to it, and then you will add the link to the description. So when they click on it, it will take them to your video. So you cannot embed it in here specifically, but you can still make it available for students to access. I really was thinking about that. There's got to be a way to do that. Well, we can't embed it, unfortunately. I still think it's a shortcoming, but we can still have students access a video by putting in a link to the video file. That's the way we do it. Whew. All right, so we just have some examples about that. Scoring rubric, evaluate. Okay, we've done all of that. Provide your ideas. Do you think the solution will work? And just what questions do you want them to ask as they review each other's work? So some different ways to do that. All right, let's kill these. Do we want to do, because we are getting a little bit short here. Yeah, you know, I think we have time. This is a very short one. So let's take a quick look at item 6, forms for discussion. So one of the things that we can use forms for is generating discussion information within a class, or whether it's a Zoom class or a live class. Can we use forms to promote discussion and interaction? And it turns out we can. It's a little bit tricky, but it is possible. So let me get the link for this and drop it in the chat box. And we're going to do this just very quick because there's really not that much to it, to be honest. Form 6. And let me pull up Form 6, Forms for Discussion. You know what? I think actually this one I would actually ask you to go ahead and just take a moment and fill this one out. In case you haven't noticed, a lot of these QR forms are just two color. They're like black and blue. Some of these QR forms that I've been putting up here have lots of colors and they got reds and purples and stuff like that. I actually did that on purpose because the ones that are fancy colored are the ones I would actually like for you to fill out. So please take just a moment. It shouldn't take but 2 minutes. All right. So go ahead and take a moment and fill out this form. It's 2 questions plus a short answer. If you need that QR code, there it is, and the link is over in the chat box. Okay. Waiting for responses. So just take a moment, please, and respond to that form. There's the code and the links in the chat box. And once we've got 6 or 7 in there, then I'll explain what we're going to do with this. Okay. If you haven't done it yet, don't panic. If you want to go ahead and finish, go ahead and finish. That's fine. But here's what this is for. The topic of this form is using forms to generate discussions or generate discussion items. So what I have just done is I have asked you some very pointed questions, right? And now, as the instructor, as the presenter, we could take some time, if we had a lot more time, and we could then start to discuss. It's like, oh, you know, a lot of folks are saying, yeah, very likely they would use it for multiple choice, but you know, maybe not so much for reading records. Well, let's talk about that. Why do you think it'd be useful for one, but not for reading records? So you're basically providing data, you're providing information for me that I can then use to guide our discussions. You know, in this case, I just used about Google Forms because that's the topic today, but regardless of what the topic is, I can ask you some questions. What are your feelings about physics, right? And then as I'm watching your responses come in, I have information where I can begin to ask probing questions, and I can get feedback and have you provide more information. So I could say, for example, the one that seems most useful, people are saying it's the quizzes. Third most useful, well, we got the most on multiple choice. So how can we make that more useful? So basically, I'm taking this information, and then we can have a discussion about it. So it's not just, the kid sitting silently at his computer or on his tablet or something. We can actually turn that quick individual work into something that we can engage in conversationally as a group. So for providing data or information for generating discussions, this actually works very, very well. We're not going to take time to do it today. We've got 10 minutes left, but that's how we would do it. I ask questions, I get your information, and then we take that to have a discussion around your responses. And frankly, it's also kind of interesting. You will notice, however, I'll just point out one thing very quickly here. Let me blow it up a little bit more. You cannot see all of the options. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here, but I do have a slider that allows me to get to the rest of them. So if I've got more items than can be displayed on the page, I'm going to get a slider so I can see the rest of them. And obviously I can go right to the spreadsheet, but that's not what we're doing here. We're just looking for information to generate discussion. So I'm probably just going to keep the responses this page up, and then we'll use this. Interesting. Most useful, student check-in. A lot of responses there. So that's how we use them for discussion. And I think we are going to skip 7. We've been looking at results, and I showed you how to create the spreadsheet and some very simple ways to manage the spreadsheets, which is where all the data goes. I showed you how to print it. So we've done a lot of that. So let me now, in the 8 minutes we have left, we're going to talk about how do you share spreadsheets. And this might reflect the question we had at the beginning, like how do you get students to do it? Like how do you get them here? So let's go there and take a look at that. Let me bring this down a little bit. At the top of every form, I'm over here in the question. So this is the editing form development side section. There is a button up here called Send. And this is what the Send does. It gives you some options. Send form. If you want to collect their email addresses, you require the email addresses. They've got to be logged into Google, and it gets emailed to them, and the form itself collects that address. But I always just put in a question. That works just fine. How do I want to send it? Do I want to send it as email? In which case, I'm going to put who do I want to send it to down here. And it will send them a link to the form. Okay. I can get the link itself, right? Which is what I've been putting over in the chat box, and it's in the handouts. And here is this really long, crazy link. But fortunately, there's a little button called shorten, and it gives me a much more manageable link. I can copy it. I can email that to people like what I did today. Or I can put that onto a document, or I can put it in a presentation, or whatever I want to do. I can simply get the link and then share that link. I do recommend you use the shortening feature because, as you can see, these go on a long time. So shorten. And if you have a web page for your class and you want to simply put this form into the page, so when students or parents or whomever go to that page, it will give you the code that you put into your web page. And how big do you want the form to be? And when it's displayed on the page, how big should it be? So all you need to do is simply copy this, Control C, and then in your web page editor, paste in that link, and it will put the form right on the page. So if you have a page of assignments for your students, you could simply put the form right on there, which might be kind of handy if students don't have tablets or smartphones that can access QR codes. That's a nice way to do it. So that's sending forms, and then we just cancel and we're out of there. And I'll go back there again because I need that. So let me go back to send. I'm going to get the link. This time I'm going to get the entire link. So I'm going to click on it, which highlights it. I can click copy or Control C. Okay, I've got it copied. Now, where am I making all of these lovely QR codes? There's one site, and it's free, because free is good, that I really, really like. And I'm going to put the address to it here. It might be in your handouts. Yesterday's video is private. It should be available if you have the link. I will go back and fix that later. It should be accessible to anybody with the link. So give me some time after today and we'll do it. Okay. So that's the link that we want to make a QR code. We're going to go to http://www.qrcode-monkey.com. And you want to make sure you put the hyphen in the right place, because otherwise you go off to weird places. Let me blow that up a little bit more. Font, let's go to 36. Okay. Like I said, I don't remember if that's in the handout or not. But let me just go to it very, very quickly, and then we're pretty much done. So QR code, let me just copy it out of here. Copy, pull up a web browser, new tab. And this is what it looks like. And I'll blow it up a little bit. So here, QR code monkey. You can also just search for QR code monkey. Here under enter content, that's where I paste in my link. So that's all of this stuff up here that Google Forms gave me. I'm going to paste it in here. I can change the colors, single color, gradient. I can just click on it and choose whatever I want. I can do a gradient, first color, second color. I can have the little corner eyeballs be a specific color and the boxes around them, and so forth. All right, so once I've done all of the things I want to do, all the customization, then I simply come over here. You don't want the one that's there. I will click on the button that says create QR code. So I put in my link. I change colors if I want to. I can customize it for the eyeball shapes and stuff like that. And then finally, I say create. And in a moment, there is my QR code, which I can download as a PNG, which is a graphics file, or a PDF, but they don't do color gradients or EPSS. Generally, I just do PNG. And it's going to download that QR code, which I can then send in an email. I can put it on a web page. I can project it on my board, however I want to do it. There's the code that I just created. So that makes a very simple way to share the links to forms. All right. And in our last minute, so yes, about the video, after this, I will go back and change that so that you'll be able to access it. I might just have to open it up completely. So the very last thing for us to do, it's your exit ticket. So if you could, this is like, we're done, evaluation. So while you're doing that, let me say thank you. I hope this has been useful to you. Hope you got something out of it. We've spent a lot of time together over the last couple days. So I really do hope it was valuable to you. So if you could, please take a moment. I'm not going to show the results here, but if you could fill this out for me. And if you've got any last minute questions, now is the time to do it. But we are at 4 o'clock, by golly. We raced and we did it just right. So thank you all. And I'll watch the chat box for questions, or feel free to turn on your voice. And otherwise, thank you. Have a lovely day, and keep your chin up, keep your head up in these very strange times that we are going through. And then when you're done, feel free to go ahead and just close out of the meeting, so I know you're done. And I will stick around until the last person walks out the door, so to speak. Did I send the correct exit ticket? Ooh, well, I think so. That'd be a little embarrassing, wouldn't it? Let's double check. Okay, exit ticket. There's that. Post the link to the YouTube video again. Yes, I'll be happy to do that. Give me just a moment. Let's just do it this way. Share. Oh, that's yesterday. So video link right there.
I was just double checking. That was the exit ticket I did.
Oh,
Was it the right one?
Actually, you know what? I apologize. I really should have looked at it before I sent it out. This isn't your exit ticket. This is how we do an exit ticket for students. So my mistake. I built this last week. Now I feel kind of silly at the moment, to be honest with you. This isn't for you. This is an example of an exit ticket we would use for students, because obviously, rating your behavior today, and that's just silly. So we are done. You don't need to do this one. Matter of fact, please don't do this one. It's just simply an example of an exit ticket for kids. I will take, you're welcome to laugh at me behind my back. That's fine, actually. Oh, everyone in meeting. So video link. Yeah, that was silly of me. But so that's an example of that. So I'm going to just get rid of it. We are done for the day. So thank you all so much. Have a great Friday, good weekend, and best luck, best wishes to everybody for the remainder of the school year.